Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Beyond Divorce, Embracing Change. Armando's back with us. He looks sharp today, Armando.
Thank you, Michael. Have somewhere to be later. I gotta look nice.
Where you're going?
Where I'm going, I need to look sharp.
Sharp. Yeah, sharp. Got it. Well, I'm going to let everyone know that's listening to this. This is a real heavy topic, but it's an important one. We don't want to avoid the heavy topics. But we know that when people are driving to work or wherever they're doing when they're listening to the podcast, like, how much heavy do you want, right out of the gate? But this topic is really about suicide and divorce, and when the topic of suicide really comes up.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be important, Armando, to share with them, because we know that there's help out there when suicide comes up, or there's, contemplation or thoughts. What's that number for them?
So there is a number. If you or somebody you know is contemplating suicide or having a hard time, there is a suicide hotline. That number is 988. If you just dial 988, it takes you directly to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And so they're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it's a really good resource for either yourself or anybody else. If somebody discloses to you that they're having suicidal ideation or self-harm, to reach out, and they'll be able to guide and help you.
Thank you, Armando, for sharing that. And I think you guys need to remember 988 is that number, and it's really important to remember.
Yeah.
For people, if they're having thoughts, you get direct. So what do? You get directly to a person to talk to?
Yes, you get directly to a person to talk to. They kind of get your information and they kind of talk through you. They talk through the situation, and if need be, they will reach out to local law enforcement to do a welfare check or other things as needed.
Whatever needs to be done there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, I noticed you made a note here. I like it too. He says divorce can amplify mental health vulnerabilities. Can you talk more on that?
Yeah. So divorce is a stressor for the whole family. Right?
Sure.
It is a major stressor, and it is changing the foundation of children, right? Like if our family, if our parents are our foundation, divorce is kind of shaking that, right? Think about an earthquake. It's if you have an earthquake and your house has some vulnerabilities or some cracks, what's going to happen to your house?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to expose those vulnerabilities. It's going to expose those cracks that already exist.
Right.
So if you have a child that already struggles with mental health, or this brings about the mental health, this can cause, or it causes mental health like stress, this will add to that.
Yeah, it's basically like if you're at a 2 on the volume scale and divorce comes up, it can amplify that 2 to a 7.
Yeah.
Or higher. And so we do see kids struggle with mental health issues when divorce is going on. I think we used to call them distractors too, like when the kid was subconsciously finding a problem about themselves, or amplifying their problem, and it would cause the parents to focus on the kid more than each other. And the kids don't normally do that on purpose. Like, I can't wait to get into the behavioral hospital. I did have one kid say they wanted to go to the behavioral hospital to get a break from their parents.
I've had somebody say something similar, like they just wanted a break.
Well, I appreciate the honesty. It's like, we're going to walk out of here like we've got a major issue, and in reality, it's just like, I need a break.
Yeah. And
I'm like, I think there's a better way to do this break than going to the mental hospital. However, that's the kind of stuff that I love, that when we get to work with kids and they can be that vulnerable with us. And I want to create that kind of vulnerability with them for their parents. Like, I want their parents to be able to experience that kind of vulnerability from their kids. But this is a really serious deal when a kid really is thinking about ending their life, or even a parent.
Well, and that was the other thing as you were talking, and I was thinking about, like, your life is changing, right? And this can be very difficult for everybody. And so when you have these huge changes in your life and you're not stable, or you're questioning everything, who am I? What is my life supposed to be? That sense of hopelessness,
yes,
is the number one like warning sign, and we'll talk about warning signs, but that sense of hopelessness is a big predictor or a big warning sign of suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts.
Parents and kids feeling hopeless.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it does happen on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go over like the stress of divorce. I know you made a note here to review kind of the different roles that kids play.
Mm-hmm.
So which ones do you want to hit on? You want all three? Or?
Yeah, we'll go over all three real quickly. So in our previous podcast, we talked about the different roles kids play, right? The distractor, the gatekeeper, and the avoiders, right? So our avoiders are what, Michael? Go ahead and
The avoider is the kid who goes and gets really busy. They get busy with work, school, friends, extracurricular activities, whatever it may be. It's a way of avoiding the family system because the stress of it's just too much. And so they basically avoid. They try to stay away as much as possible from anything that deals with family dynamics.
Yeah.
That's your avoider.
That's your avoider, right? And then your gatekeeper is your kind of your typical kid stuck in the middle, kind of going back and forth, sending messages, trying to keep the peace, not rock the boat.
This is the kid telling you what you want to hear, not what they really feel, because they want to make sure that everyone's happy and everyone's peaceful, and so they tell two different messages to their parents.
Right.
Each parent thinks the other parent has the lie, when in actuality, the kid might be lying to both of you.
Nobody has the truth.
Yeah, because the kid's just trying to maintain that peace and doesn't know how to do it. So we call those gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm. And then our distractors, who are my favorites, are the ones that act out, right? Those are the ones that are, dabbling in substance abuse or getting into fights or having suicidal ideation or self-harm. They're distracting from the other problem. They're trying to put the spotlight on themselves as opposed to the divorce or the conflict that may be occurring.
And I think if we have a suicidal kid who's an avoider, that's even scarier, because if you have an avoider kid who's contemplating suicide, maybe they started as a distractor, didn't work, they move into avoidance, but they still have the suicide ideation, they may be more likely to do it.
Because they're trying to escape, they're trying to avoid.
That's my point.
And I think gatekeepers, too, they're under a great deal of stress because they're telling everybody what they want to hear.
Right.
They're not being truthful of what's going on, and that pressure can impact them. I have actually found that gatekeepers, in my experience, gatekeepers are the ones that tend to have more suicidal outcry out of nowhere. Like, you think it's out of nowhere, and then when you scratch the surface, you're like, oh, well, no wonder. You have this incredible sense of pressure, and nothing's going to get better because you're not telling anybody what you want, and so you have that sense of hopelessness.
Right.
And the only escape you have is suicide or death.
That's so sad. And I think that goes back into this other note you made here for emotional impacts. And you mentioned grief, guilt, confusion, and loyalty conflicts. Go through that real quick.
Yeah. So when you're a child in the middle of this, or even a parent in the middle of this, there's grief, right? You're losing the loss of your family, the family that in your mental model of what you thought it was.
Right.
Right.
That's the grief cycle we talked about. Yeah.
Exactly. It's that grief cycle. You're mourning that, and then the guilt of, well, is it my fault? Right. How many kids think that it's their fault, or is it something that they did? Good, bad, or indifferent, I think in the kids that I see that come here, they don't tend to have that much guilt. I think because they've seen their parents go through the court system, and they're like, this is not my problem, this is their problem.
It's all them.
So maybe they don't view it so much as the guilt, but outside of that, definitely there are a lot of kids that feel guilty about, like, oh, did I cause this? What did I do? Yeah. Right? And they have that sense.
How did I play a role in that?
Mm-hmm. Confusion, what's going on? I don't understand what's happening. I become overwhelmed.
I don't know who to believe.
I don't know who to believe.
Yeah. I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
Especially parents are telling two different things.
Or the way you saw your parents was very different than what was going on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Right? All of a sudden, I mean, I can think of one client or one family I worked with many years ago, actually, where the child was just like, I never saw it coming. Because my parents... The divorce. They looked so good together. They never saw it coming. And I remember the grandparents were actually bringing them to session. And the grandparents, I remember speaking to the grandparents, and they said, yeah, we had no idea. Right?
So everyone's in shock.
Everybody's in shock.
Yeah.
And this was not a volatile divorce by any means. Like, it was just they were bringing the child to kind of help process some of the process. But they were just, I didn't know, right? And so they were just so shook by what was going on. And loyalty conflicts, like allegiance, right? Am I supposed to have allegiance?
Yeah.
But I love mom, but I'm supposed to be aligned with dad only? You're torn in between.
So these are emotional impacts kids can all go through.
Absolutely.
And probably are going through. Where do you feel like suicide is probably taking the hardest grab Is it in the loyalty conflict, the confusion, the guilt, the grief?
I actually have seen it a lot in the loyalty conflicts
Wow.
because what happens is I have to pick here. I feel like I'm forced to pick one parent over the other, someone I love. This is so hard for me, and I don't see this ending because I'm forever with my parents. So I have hopelessness that nothing's going to change. So,
And this is why, this is why you sit in gatekeepers then.
yeah, and I sit in gatekeepers a lot. Or I'm a burden because my parents my parents keep going back to court because of me.
Right.
Right? It's because of me. I mean, I have heard kids say, their parents get mad at them and they're in an argument and the parents say, well, the only reason why I'm spending $40,000 because of you to go to court to fight your mom or to fight your dad or to fight the other parent.
What do you think a kid feels when a parent says something like that to them?
Oh, it kills them. It's a throat punch. It's a gut punch. It's a...
Like you're going broke and you're saying it's because of me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and this kid is like, I just want to love my parents.
Oh, man.
So imagine that feeling all the time on top of just normal stressors of being a child.
Yeah.
Right. I think as I was prepping for this podcast, I was looking up some research, and the percentage of suicidal ideation that has increased over the years from ages ages 8 to like 14 is what the CDC was looking at the time. And those numbers stopped at about 2021, which we know some of the other data that's coming out after COVID, after 2022, it jumped up dramatically. But those numbers aren't, because it was so hard to get that information. It's not quite solidified yet.
You're telling me that they're measuring data on suicide ideation at 8?
Yeah. I've worked with, so for our listeners, my background is working with schools, and I was a crisis counselor for several years in a school district. And I mean, I would be called to elementary schools, middle schools all the time for suicide assessments to kind of check in. I think I was averaging, one or two a week. Like if I broke it down for the school year, I was averaging 1 or 2 a week, and that varies between the different schools. So, I mean, it does impact them. That is actually when we do a screener for things, that is actually one of the questions that we ask.
Maybe we should go over the warning signs then with these parents to kind of like, what kind of things can you look for? That will help you just kind of navigate it a little bit. What are some warning signs?
Well, one of them is, of course, if they're just talking about it, right? If they're just bringing it up, if they're talking that they want to die or disappear.
Okay.
And be careful with this one, especially in younger kids. You'll hear it from them, and sometimes they just don't have the words of what they're saying. Right?
The language,
They don't have the language. I just want to die.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times when I got called into elementary schools, a lot of the work that we did after the fact was that they scaled really low in terms of actual suicidal ideation. They just didn't have the words, right? Like they were just felt so overwhelmed. So instead of saying, I want to die, we give them the words, I feel overwhelmed, I feel frustrated, right?
You give them new words to use.
We give them new words to use, and we kind of explain what that means.
Yep.
Because they don't understand, or they have a hard time understanding the concept of death being final.
When I've had someone have the courage to tell me something like, I want to die, I've learned to ask what would be different.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I'm going to walk through it with them instead of trying to help them avoid it. They're obviously so overwhelmed with it. If I say, oh, don't do that, or people care about you, I mean, they're gonna feel like I'm not hearing them. Like this is too heavy, and so I like to just do the, I want to die, and part of my risk suicide thing is I'll ask. I was like, well, do you have a plan to kill yourself?
Absolutely.
And if they go, yeah, I go, what's the plan? Like I'll talk about it. Like I'm not afraid to. I used to be. I'm not gonna lie. That was a hard thing for me because I was like, man, the more I talk about it, the more they're gonna do it.
And that is actually something that people think that, well, if I talk about it or I bring it up, I'm putting the idea in their head.
Yep, they do.
That idea is already in their head. If they're truly thinking about it, it's there. All you're doing is bringing it to light to talk about it. And so
that's right.
That is one of the things. And again, in school specifically, there was some pushback about talking about suicide just because people were worried about, it
almost like we're encouraging it. And it's like, well, no, it's out there. And there are some horrific websites out there that will show you how to do it, how to do these things. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like it is truly, it's awful. Like the the things I have seen and experienced working with like youth and teens is awful. And so that's what we're combating, right? And if I'm hopeless, if I'm already talking about it, and my searches,
you can't make it. Yeah, what we had a professor used to say, you can't be double dead.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're afraid they're going to die, and if you're that afraid they're going to die, you can't do it any worse. They're already like there, so you might as well just talk about it. Like, what do you mean? When are you thinking about doing this? What's your plan? How are you going to do it? If they can answer all those questions, you need to get them somewhere.
Absolutely. And I mean, and to your point, I don't know how many times I've asked that question at this point in my career. But every time I ask it, there's always that little part of my stomach that's a little nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I ask, because, back of my head is like, say no. Oh, you said yes. Okay, we got to go.
Say no, you said yes.
Yeah, no, I mean.
Well, I think we're all feeling that. And I had a parent that would bring their kid here to me because they brought up something about not wanting to live. This first sign, which is talking about one died of spirit, and they bring the kid to me to have an interview with him. And I'm interviewing, and I made it very clear to them, like, I'll have no problem talking to them about it. If I walk out of this room and I'm like, no, they got a plan, I am concerned that they're going to do this, they're going to follow through with it, you're taking them to the hospital, because I think they were trying to avoid going there.
Oh, no, you got to go there.
Yeah, if we're at that point, right? And so I think they just trusted that I would discern it and go, no, take them. Makes sense. And so, when you're uncertain and you're not sure, I guess what we're encouraging is have the dialogue. When they answer the questions pretty thoroughly, like, yeah, I've got a plan, so what I'm going to do it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's time to go. Like, we got to get you somewhere they can observe you and get you help. So what are some other signs?
So one of the other ones, and I have a couple of clients who love my teen clients, but they'll look up memes, they'll look up jokes about suicide. And look, I'm all for dark humor. I'm pro dark humor. That's how I get through my day some days. But you have to discern, is that dark humor or is that a red flag of something? What are they doing? Quick story. I had a kid that I've been working, or that I had worked with actually. And one of these dark humor kids, right? He'd bring memes and he's like, oh, look at this meme of suicide. And I'm like, okay, it's funny the first 2 times, and then you keep bringing it up. And I flat out ask, I'm like, is this your way of telling me that you want to kill yourself? No. And I was like, are you sure? Yeah. Cut to 2 months, 3 months later, we've been doing the work, and I ask him again. He's like, no. Well, then the next session, and I was seeing him weekly, he discloses, no, I am having suicidal thoughts, and this is what's going on. And I was like, yeah. And we had a whole conversation. And then I told him, I was like, so here's the deal. You are not to be making jokes about this anymore, because you made it seem like it was just a joke, and everybody asked you, and I told your parents, like, oh no, he's identified with that kind of group, because some of our, I think the kids call them like the emo kids, or kind of the right. And,
that's their name now, yeah.
And I may
we call them goth.
I may or may not have been a weird emo kid back in high school. I was a little weird kid. So I over-identify maybe, but those things, like, you can wrap yourself up into that, and that can be your identity. The problem with that is that where does the line, where is it? Where it's like a joke and like a coat I wear, and then that's actually how I feel.
So one of the signs it sounds like you're explaining to parents is, if your kids are joking about it or bringing it up or talking about a friend that whatever, it's okay to broach the topic. They've already brought it to your attention.
Definitely.
Yeah, ask. You're thinking about this?
Why are you bringing that up?
Has this come up before for you?
And they're going to get mad. They're going to get annoyed.
So?
Let them get mad and annoyed. I told a client one time.
How much you love them, right?
Yeah, that same client. I told him, I was like, be mad. I'd rather you be mad and upset with me than dead. Because you can be mad and angry at me and alive than dead. And he looked at me, and I was like,
that's hilarious. How dare you want me to be alive?
Yeah, no, I have that rapport with that kid where I'm like, I am going to, and one point he did go to the hospital. He went to a intensive outpatient, IOP. And when I did a follow-up check-in, he was like, I'm so mad at you. You put me here. And I was like, first off, I didn't put you here. Your actions put you here, and your thoughts. And you know what? Go ahead and be mad, because you're at least alive. Be mad.
Yep.
And I see him monthly. We're great now. So, but
mad to glad?
Be mad. Yeah, be mad. But you're alive.
That's right. Okay.
But with that said too, right? And if you notice mood swings too in children,
okay,
big mood swings, they go from really deep sadness to calmness. That's always a big red flag of something.
Yeah.
Because what that shows is that, like, if I'm really in a deep depression or real sadness,
Right.
and then I've made the decision I'm going to kill myself, I'm at peace with it. And so that can be a sign of something.
And I'm going to go through this kind of quickly for the listeners. I'm going to go through. So the first one was verbal cues, which we talked on.
Yeah.
But let me just kind of hit the points. Verbal cue, talking about wanting to die or disappear, expressing hopelessness, things will never get better, saying they feel like a burden, you're better off without me, something like that, joking about death or dying. Those are the verbal cues to look for. Then we have emotional and behavior changes. This doesn't necessarily mean suicide, but this could be leading to it, right?
And that's the hard part, especially if you're talking with teenagers.
Yeah.
Like, is this normal teenage angst of like I'm just angry, I hate you, and whatever, or is there something else going on?
Yeah, I call it dipping a toe. I'm going to dip a toe in the water and go, I'm going to find out what this is. That's what curiosity is so helpful. So you might see things like dramatic mood swings. They go from sadness to like a sudden calming state, or withdrawing from friends, family, and activities they once enjoyed. That's a big one for me, I've noticed, when they withdraw. Increased anger, irritability, or reckless behavior, decline in academic performance or school attendance, giving away prized possessions, or loss of interest in personal appearance or hygiene. I've seen the prized possessions one. I had a friend of mine that had committed suicide, and he was giving away things like crazy. Like, oh, you like that picture? Well, when I die,
you want it? You can have it?
Yeah, and just like things that were super important to him at one point in time, just giving everything away. I was a kid at the time. I didn't know any different. But, now that it comes up, I see.
So real quickly, with the loss of hygiene, or the hygiene and appearance, this was a student I was working with, and it actually went the other way. From where they usually were unkept, and then all of a sudden, they kind of changed to their mood to look nice and kind of clean.
You wouldn't think anything's wrong with that.
No, you wouldn't, right? And I remember, I distinctly remember having the conversation with the teacher, and I said, huh. And I talked to the kid, and I remember asking, hey, where did this change come from? How come? And they said, well, I made my decision. I want people to remember me this way as opposed to the other way.
Wow.
And I was like, what do you mean by that?
Well,
right?
yeah.
Like, what do you mean remember, right? Remember how?
Uh-huh.
And then they disclosed, and I was like, oh, yeah, no, you can't be here. You got to go to a hospital. And
so what you're really saying is taking an interest in the change. I see a change. I took an interest in it, right? And you inquire.
And be curious, right? Where's that coming from?
Yep. So the last one's physical, a couple more. Physical and somatic complaints, frequent unexplained headaches, stomach aches, or physical complaints. We call them psychosomatic in our field. Change in sleep patterns, sleeping too much or too little. Changes in their eating habits, sudden weight loss or gain. Those just could be a sign of that they're extremely depressed, right?
Or stressed. I mean, if my parents are going through divorce and I'm doing those things, what is that? Does that mean I'm thinking about suicide, or is that just I'm stressed because my parents are going back to court for the fifth time?
This is a good one here. We talk about social media cues. Kids love to put things on social media. This is a great way to start. Like, if you want to start your investigation, you might start there. Posting or searching about death, dying, or suicide.
Yep. And that's what I said. There are horrible websites. I mean, if you open up a kid's TikTok or Instagram Reels and you see their algorithm is nothing but like death or talking about suicide, that's a red flag. Have a conversation with your child.
Engaging with dark, hopeless, or self-harm content.
Exactly.
Perfect.
That same stuff.
I would start. I mean, my encouragement to parents is start with their social media. Look at what that looks like. That'll tell you a lot.
And I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come into me and tell me that, like, oh, I saw this message that my friend posted, and I reached out to my friend, or I reached out to their parent, and I got them some help.
Right. And this is an important one, but I don't think it's. I guess it could be related to feed into it, suicide, but I wouldn't say if you see these things, that means suicide. That's not what we're saying here. Increased anxiety or depression after custody changes or parental conflict. That does not mean your kid's suicidal. It means they're adjusting to a change.
Yes. Expressing
feelings of being stuck in the middle or not belonging anywhere. In a divorce, it's common for that to happen.
Yes.
That does not also mean suicide. This is why the curiosity is so powerful.
And I think a lot of these things can be, is it just normal child development, kind of curious, like, ooh, I'm kind of morbid and I want to learn about like stuff like that. Like, again, a little weird emo kid in high school. So the stuff I read was, which now, like, looking back, it's like, well, no wonder I'm in this field. Like, I don't know why I even questioned doing this. But like at the time, the things I was reading, either my parents didn't know what I was reading or they just trusted me. I think they just didn't know what I was reading.
Sorry, Mom and Dad. Sounds like...
They're great parents. They were really involved. I just don't know that I read a lot.
They're like, okay, it worked out.
They're like, he's reading. It's fine.
He's reading. It's fine.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's fine. Good.
It's fine.
Right? Read some books.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last one is healthy co-parenting dynamics. I want to talk about that. And less conflict is better. Can we go over that? And we talked about some protective factors. Let's do that quickly.
So real quickly, I'm going to give you a quick story to kind of encompass this.
Okay, go ahead.
So there was a family I worked with, and it was a young man. I mean, he was probably, I think when we started, he was in 5th grade. So young. How old is 5th grade kids? I don't.
5th grade kids probably about 11.
11. So
12 maybe.
We started at 11.
Okay.
So at 11, severe, like, parents, like, just were not getting along, right? They were divorcing. It was bad. Dad didn't really want the divorce. Kid was kind of aligned with dad. And so he started it started with behavioral, with, like, just getting in trouble at school, fights, destroying stuff in the classroom, just bad stuff, right? Kind of calmed him down, kind of worked through stuff. Then it escalated to, he started making suicidal comments, right? And initially, the school counselor initially thought that it was, oh, he just doesn't have the words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of give him the words. Nope. He was talking about it, escalated. And I remember having the conversation with him, and he said, well, it's just because my parents don't get along and I can't live my life without my parents together. I was like, okay.
Wow.
And so as we were having that conversation, talked to the parents and said, you guys are fighting over it. Are you going to fight over a dead kid? Like, well, that's what's going to happen.
Wow.
And
you said that.
I did. I was kind of mad because I could see them bickering in the way, and I was like, if I'm an 11-year-old, how I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
Cut to the parents getting along. Well, they were faking it, right? They were faking getting along. Because every time they interacted, they were like, okay, cool, whatever. Well, their messages to each other were very different. So this young man was riding in the car with dad, saw the messages because dad had his phone out. Kid picks up the phone and then starts reading through the messages.
No.
Gets super angry and is like, you were lying to me. You guys hate each other still. No, I don't. Literally, like, they're at a stop sign. He jumps out of the car and is like, I'm gonna go run into traffic. So he, like, runs into traffic, wants to kill himself. So they stop, they grab him, they do all that stuff, take him to the hospital. At the hospital, the parents are arguing, so the kid has even more of an issue. So it just escalates even further. So after, I don't know how many family sessions, how many parent sessions, we finally got to a point where the parents were actually cordial with each other. The kid's behaviors, kid's suicidal ideation dropped dramatically.
What was it about that meant so much to the child?
That he's allowed to love both his parents. He's able to see that just because his family looks different, he can still live with both of them.
Wow.
Right? Because he started with saying, I can't live if my parents aren't together. Like, I don't know how that exists. Cut to, okay, I can do this because they can do this. I think Janan always makes the comment, like, the kids are going to look to the parents. Like, they're going to be okay if you're okay. And so if you're okay and you're okay with that other co-parent, that kid's going to be okay. And so that was one.
Is this why it bothers you if a parent sits down in a session with us, tells us they want the best for their children, or they're only interested in their best interest, but yet they can't figure out that the two of them is the best interest?
Absolutely. I get a little frustrated with parents sometimes. And even in reunification work. Right?
So one of the protective features you're saying, I'm sorry,
no, go for
cut
it.
you off, but one of the protective features then, if you want to protect your children from ever getting to a place of not wanting to live, what you're saying, the protective feature is work together.
I mean, that is one
that's
of the
like
biggest,
you want to protect them from it?
Then
Great,
learn how to work
that.
together, right? And that's why, again, like our distractors, sometimes they do that because they see their parents working together. And so it reassures them that, like, oh, they can do this.
Because I'm such in a bad place, they come together for me.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then reinforces it.
Yep, right? And so and then this child really was a distractor. I mean, he was like pretty classic distractor in terms of what he was doing.
No doubt.
And so that just kind of illustrates the healthy co-parent dynamic, what it can look like and what it cannot look like.
Right.
And I always tell parents too that, if a child is like that, they're the thermometer, right? If you're not,
the child is the thermometer of the family system. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've said that to me before. That's it, right?
And I've seen it. I see it all the time where, oh, well, they're having these behaviors and they're having thoughts of harming themselves or lighting fires or what have you.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with, Armando? Something we hadn't hit on yet?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing to say is that, like, it's not all doom and gloom. There are protective factors for children, right?
Yeah.
I think whenever I've done numerous trainings on this topic, and it can always feel really heavy, right? But there are a lot of protective factors. There's a lot of things you can do. So maybe you and your co-parent just can't see eye to eye. Okay. As long as there is one good trusted adult that this child has in their life, that is the number one biggest protective factor, whether that be at school, coach, mentor, church, grandparent, whatever. If they have that one adult that is trusted, that is outside of all that mess that's going on, that is one of the greatest protective factors.
Okay.
Right? And so I used to tell the teachers that all the time, is that's an important role that you
The
have.
kids have someone they can lean into.
Mm-hmm. And they can kind of
Outside
of the system, right?
Okay.
If there's clear boundaries, right? I know what's expected. I know what I'm looking into. I don't have that hopelessness. I don't have that confusion, right? What am I supposed to do? Right? Those kinds of things. If they're engaged in activities, if they're engaged at school, they're engaged in church, if they're engaged sports, whatever, right?
Yeah, their activeness is a protective factor.
Exactly. They're engaged in something. They have things that they like, and they're doing that, right? Whether you're a weird little emo kid that goes to Comic-Cons, cool, go do that. You're engaged. But shout out to me, younger man. But those kinds of things are important. And those are the biggest protective factors for kids. And so even if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to mess up my kid. If you can hear those protective factors and they have one or two of those things, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And ask your kid, right? I kind of ragged on my parents, but I mean, my parents, I remember one time my mom did ask me, she's a nurse. And so she did ask me, she's like, hey, you're reading a lot and you're in your room a lot. You know what I was reading, but she was like, hey, are you okay? Are you thinking? And I was like, no. And I looked at her like she was crazy. I was like, what are you? No.
But she cared enough to ask.
Yeah.
And she, man, that took a lot of courage on her part and vulnerability on yours.
It did.
I think one of the things I like to leave parents with is like, just because your kid feels hopeless in a moment doesn't necessarily mean that they want to commit suicide, right? So hopelessness is a natural thing that can happen when we just don't know what to do, where to go. The thing is, it's about how long your kid sits in it. You know, these people that have been in divorce for a multitude of years, do it this way. If you, a parent, are listening to this and you find yourself like feeling hopeless and you're just like, I'm tired, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, your child is feeling that same thing. The child feels you. The child is magnifying in themselves whatever you're feeling. So take what you feel, know that it's probably magnified into your child. And that's a way to help you go. You have to work through your stuff. If you're a parent, you're feeling hopeless and you're feeling there's no way out and you're having contemplations of suicide, I'm going to encourage you as well to check in with a hotline, check in with a therapist. There's no penalty. I'd never penalize a person for saying I'm stuck, I'm struggling.
Oh, never.
And I'll leave this story and we'll finish with this, but I had a guy come in and he's struggling with some alcoholism. And he told me point blank, he goes, my ex-wife's going to come in here and tell you I drink too much. And I said, okay, is it true? And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, it actually is true. He goes, I've been sober now for a while, but I have a drink problem. And I said, awesome. I said, you know what this did for me? He goes, what's that? I said, if she brings it up, I get to say I already know. And if it ever comes up in court, I get to say that you're the one who told me. Which means that you're taking ownership of the things that are part of you. I don't penalize people for telling me they're struggling. I'm not going to penalize a parent that came in and said, Michael, I think I'm just going to kill myself, man. I'm feeling so hopeless. I'm not going to look at you with like, oh my God, we better report it to the court. I'm going to look at you and go, how can I help?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I want people to know, like, it's okay to feel stuck. It's okay if you feel hopeless. A lot of people feel it. Why do you think they created a hotline? They did that because they know this happens. Please do yourself a favor, do your kids a favor. Come talk about it, right? Reach out. You don't want to reach out to me. You have a hotline you can talk to. Let's find a way to navigate this process together and get you to the other side, right? This is what's really cool about life too. If one exists, so does the other. If it's hot, there's cold, right? If there's up, there's down, there's left, there's right. There's all these things, right? There's good, there's evil, whatever. If there's hopelessness,
there's hope.
There's hope.
And I think that's the thing, that it is just momentarily, right? That hopelessness can be momentarily. And they have studied.
Oh, it can last forever. It can go next day, tomorrow, a year, a month, 2 years, a decade, but it's momentary.
And that is why, like, if you or somebody else, please reach out, like, use that hotline number, 988, right? Schools are great resources. We're great, whatever. You know, there are plenty of mobile crisis units, depending on where you live. Here where we are in Tarrant County, the mobile crisis unit will come out and do an assessment. If you need to call 911, they'll send somebody out. So you will be taken care of. Just don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes courage and guess what? And vulnerability. And you can't be courageous without vulnerability. I think that's Brene Brown. And I think it's so true. So courageous doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you're fearful and you do it anyway.
Absolutely.
That's what courage is, right? So have the courage to speak up so we can be helpful. I want to leave everyone with this. Thank you so much. If you found this helpful, we would like you to rate and review our podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. If you're listening to on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, please rate and review and share. Please let people know that we exist so that we can get more information out to people we may never meet. You know, I mean, that's the whole point of doing the podcast, is getting people information, and we want to make sure we do that. Your reviews mean so much to us and allow this information to be put in front of more eyes. So if you could please take the time to review, I'm going to ask you again, please do that. We will ask you to, that gives us a chance to know how we're doing as well. So please take the time to review and give us some feedback. We haven't had questions in a while. I think we need to probably open that back up for some people.
Oh, yeah.
I've been wanting some questions. So hoping we'll get some questions that you'll ask. We love the questions we've had before. There've been some hard ones, but they were good. So please feel free to do that for us as well. And we thank you for being here, and keep moving forward.
If you or someone you love is struggling with suicidal thoughts, you're not alone. Call or text 988 to reach the Suicide Crisis. Lifeline help is available 24/7, free and confidential.